What's going on, y'all? It's Waiver Wire Queen. Today we are going to talk about why Alvin Kamara is not a top 5 pick in fantasy football. Don't do it unless you want to lose. Stick around and we'll talk about why he is not going to be a top 5 pick this upcoming fantasy football season. Let's get right into it.
Welcome to the Blown Coverage Fantasy Football Podcast with Waiver Wire Queen.
So yes, y'all, make sure you subscribe to the channel and make sure your notifications are turned on so you can see more great content like this to help you prepare for your upcoming fantasy football season, because the goal is to stay ahead of your competition. If you're ahead of your competition, you're most likely doing what you need to do to position yourself to win every year in fantasy football. So Alvin Kamara has been one of my favorite running backs over the last few years in fantasy, especially in PPR. He's a great running back in PPR. However, the last few seasons stats been going down. He has lost some touches, several touches to Taysom Hill, which obviously has hurt his value, especially in the red zone. Taysom Hill doing his little thing, taking away touchdowns, which is why Alvin Kamara only had 4 rushing touchdowns, didn't have a bunch of receiving touchdowns as well, and that hurts his value. One of the big issues with Kamara is obviously off the field. Legal issues. He has a hearing coming up in regards to a battery case out in Vegas during the Pro Bowl weekend. So we have to see what happens with that situation, which will determine if he is going to miss any time, or if pretty much the NFL is going to issue any punishment to Kamara. That is obviously something you have to factor in when you are considering drafting him. I have him ranked in my top 10 running backs. I have him ranked 8th, and if you check out my video on the top 10 running backs going into the 2022 fantasy football season, you'll see why I have him ranked in the top 10 still, but out of my top 5. Normally I have him in my top 5. Last year I believe I had him either 3rd or 4th. Nonetheless, not in my top 5. I'm not drafting him because, again, I don't know what the heck the Saints are doing, which is going to hurt my team in fantasy. Because, okay, we're going to say they're moving forward with Winston. Are they going to allow Winston to do what he did when I don't want to necessarily say he was at his best, because that turnover issue hindered him from being a really good quarterback, but it still worked for Mike Evans, who was still hitting over 1,000 yards per season. But is it going to work with Kamara? We watched early on this season, it did not. It didn't really work with Hill as well. So at some point, they're going to have to start identifying a quarterback. Quarterback play has hurt Kamara, and it will continue to hurt Kamara. But again, you do have to factor in the legal issues to make that choice on whether you should draft him. Again, I'm not checking for him in the top 5. There are some other running backs who are in better situations currently and don't have that legal matter looming over their heads, so you don't know if they're going to miss any time. So just stay away from him. And again, statistically, some of those stats are starting to go down. He's only 26, but still, when you're already going downward, that's a red flag as well, especially if you are a PPR back and your receiving stats are starting to go down. That means your value is going to decrease as well, which is why he's also on this list. He played 13 games this past season, ranked 9th in standard, 8th in PPR, should be a top 3 PPR running back, but again, not performing as such, and it was due to several factors, including quarterback play. Let's talk about his rushing stats. 240 attempts, 898 yards, 3.74 yards per carry, which is a career low. So that is concerning to me. When you played against opponents in fantasy that had Alvin Kamara in previous seasons, you were concerned. You were like, ooh, he may end up getting 20 plus fantasy points on me. I have to worry about that. That's going to be stressful. Now it's like, okay, all right. I'm not so concerned because he hasn't been producing at that level. So it's nothing. You play against him, you're like, oh, okay, okay, and that's due to, again, several factors. Quarterback play, his play. It ain't working, guys. So you don't invest high draft picks in players that are on the decline. Not saying he can't have a bounce back year if Winston was to play well and they were to get him more involved. But again, when you have the legal situation, which we don't know what's going to happen, and play hasn't been up to par, and again, the quarterback issues, you have a player who statistically is not worth a top 5 pick at the running back position. 4 touchdowns this past season, a career low. Only 4 rushing touchdowns. Need to see more. It's like, I don't care if you are a better PPR back, you still need to get more than 4 touchdowns. You've had other seasons where you had way more than 4 touchdowns. So when you go down to 4, that's a problem for me, because you may be getting the yardage, which we see that he wasn't averaging 3.74 yards per carry. You weren't lighting it up there, so you were pretty much hurting the team. So if you had him this past season in fantasy, you struggled because you were expecting him to produce at the level of a top 5 running back, and he most certainly did not. Receiving stats. This is the most important thing for Alvin Kamara. That is what you draft him for in a PPR league, his receiving stats. What is he going to do there? 67 targets, 47 receptions, 439 receiving yards. Unacceptable, and it was a career low. Just not good at all. I mean, if he's not getting a minimum of 600 receiving yards, it's not a good season for him, and it's not good value for us based on where we are picking him, because you can go and get that same production from another running back who you may draft later. Okay, so you got to think about that as well. Does he have the potential to bounce back this season? He does. Again, like to see more about what is going to happen with him with his legal matter, which will determine if there is any punishment again. And also, is Jameis Winston still that guy for the Saints? I mean, we thought they were going to go with him last season, and Hill, it was a mess. It was a disaster. Trevor Siemian, it was horrible. And when you have poor quarterback play, a lot of times it's going to affect the running back like Alvin Kamara, and it showed. And as a PPR back, only 439 yards, just not good. It's just, oh, okay. Ooh, no. 600 a minimum. That's where we need to see him at. And I need to see more than 5 touchdowns. If you're going to be draft ahead of Austin Eckler, who had a hell of a season, you need to be doing way more than what you did this past season from a fantasy standpoint. It may have been okay for the Saints, but for us in fantasy, it's not good value where we were drafting him this past season, which is why he's not in my top 5. He's just not. And again, quarterback play, legal issues, Taysom Hill, he's going to supposedly be playing the tight end spot, which should help us out because he's not going to be stealing those goal line touches. Just give the ball to Kamara. Okay, let him do his thing and things will be good. Y'all, let me know what your thoughts are of Alvin Kamara. Should we be drafting him in the top 5 this season, or should we be fading him and moving on to other running backs in the top 5 for your fantasy football draft? Make sure you subscribe to the channel and leave some comments, and make sure you hit that like button and have those notifications turned on. Peace.
Thanks for listening to the Blown Coverage Fantasy Football Podcast. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel at Blown Coverage Fantasy Football Podcast.